Hi everybody and welcome to the Now lessons. And today we're going to learn the sh, which stands for the opposite. So let's see how it works. Well, so if we take an elementary word, so like a word that consists of one syllable usually, and add the letter sh, which is written as English C, right? What happens, right? Well, if we do that, its meaning changes to the opposite. So for example, if la means good, then we know for sure that lash means bad. That's how it works. La, good, lash, bad. Another example. Nai means warm or hot, and then we know for sure that naish means cold. Or high means high or tall. Then we know for sure that haish means low. And finally, if ser means next, then sesh means previous. So it's pretty straightforward, right? You take any elementary word and put sh after it. Well, not any, because not all elementary words have an opposite, and that's what we're going to discuss next, right? So let's see detailed info on how to make an opposite, right? Because I receive questions like, what's the opposite of cat? Is it dog? Or like, what's the opposite of hare? I don't know. Strange questions, and I think the answer to them is quite obvious. They don't have an opposite. So let's take a look at the detailed info on how to make an opposite, right? Well, we can find the detailed info in the full set of rules. It's section 2, rule 9. So let's take a look. It says, so A, this trick can only be done when only one objective solution exists. Okay? This is very important. So the antonym does not exist for all elementary words. So for example, I mean, sometimes different people might come up with different solutions, right? Person A says the opposite of this is this, and then person B says no, the opposite of this is this, and there's like a lot of people on both sides. Well, this is a bad sign, right? In this case, it's fair to say that the elementary word simply doesn't have an opposite. It doesn't have a solution, right? Because like the point of this language is so that like most of the people would think the same. So they're supposed to get similar solutions, the same solutions. Okay, so that's A. So don't say like, if cat is meow, don't say meowsh. If you want to say dog, that's really nonsense. Like, I hope you understand. Okay, so now let's take a look at B. The antonym of the antonym equals the original word. Well, that seems to be pretty obvious, right? But sometimes, it's a good way to check, okay? Because I have seen people who made a strange antonym, who built a strange antonym, and then I just ask him, okay, so what is the antonym of that then, of what you made? And they're like, oh, right, it doesn't get me back, okay? So if you wanna make sure that your solution is correct, the antonym of the antonym equals the original word. Okay, C. The antonym always behaves grammatically the same as the original word in any situation. Well, this might sound a little bit complicated for a beginner, but basically it just means that, like, if the word is a noun, then its antonym will also be a noun. Or if it's a verb, then the antonym will also be a verb. Or like if it's an adjective, etc., etc. Or if this antonym creates these links to other words in this situation, then its antonym will also create the same links to the same words. So like imagine if you take any sentence, right? When we have a sentence, grammatically words create links with each other. And now if you just take any word in a sentence and put a sh after it, it won't change anything. So the grammatical situation, the grammatical tree in the sentence will stay exactly the same. Nothing will change. That's what this rule means. Okay, D. As for the semantics, if the word is a condition slash state or an event, the antonym will also have that same feature. Well, so, an example of this would be, what's the opposite of life? And most people would say death. Well, this is not precisely true, because life is a condition, it's a state. So it's not unlike events, right? Because there are states and there are events. So life is a state, and death is an event. That's why death cannot be the opposite of life in now. Well, it kind of is. Okay, so look. So what is the opposite of life? Well, the opposite of life is like being dead. Okay, not death itself, because death is an event. Death is like it's like the end of life and beginning of death. So it's an event, it's a change, it's a shift from one state to another. So the opposite of life is actually, it's being dead. So like it's a state. You can sometimes say death as in meaning being dead in English, but just be careful. So that's what this rule is about. Or for example, what's the opposite of remember? And you might say, well, the opposite of remember is forget. And again, we have the same mistake here, because remember is actually it's a state, right? It's a state, but forget is an event. So you should be careful. E. Considering a word denoting an active / conscious action, the antonym will also be an active conscious action if such a solution exists. So, so if I try to give an example here, well, okay, think about the word want, for example. Okay, want is pretty active, right? Want is pretty active. So what's the opposite of want? You could say that like not want, but you see, not want can sound very passive, right? You're like, do you want to come with me? No, I don't. Like, it might sound very passive, right? So, but since want is a very active and conscious action, want is not exactly an action, it's more like a feeling, but whatever. So it's active and conscious, right? Then its opposite will also be active and conscious. Can you imagine that? Well, in fact, yes, we can. When you don't want, you can also actively and consciously not want something. So it's like you're against it. It's like, no, I don't wanna come with him. Like you're very active and conscious. That's what the real opposite of want is. Okay, and it doesn't always work. Okay, it doesn't always work. Like for example, think about the word no. Right? No. What's the opposite of no? No is pretty active and conscious, right? Yeah. But if we make an antonym of it, can you? So if you ask most people what's the opposite of no, most people would say not know, right? Yeah. The opposite of I know is I don't know. And now, can I don't know be active? Like, okay, it is conscious. In fact, it is conscious, just like I know. But can it be active? Not really, right? How can you actively not know something? That's strange. So the opposite of no is actually the same as the negation of no. I know, I don't know. So you can use both the negation and the opposite trick here. Okay, and finally, F. Antonym can never denote the canceling action, the back action, causality action, or the passive voice. So, what's the canceling action? Well, for example, imagine you write something, and then the canceling action, and then you ask people like, okay, what's the opposite of write? And many people would answer, well, erase. Well, so according to this rule, erase doesn't work, because erase is the canceling action of write. So the opposite of, so in now, the opposite of right, it cannot be erased according to this rule. Now, the back action. The back action is, it's like for example, like fight back. Like, what's the opposite of fight? Some people might say fight back. Well, I mean, most people wouldn't. But anyway, maybe fight back is not the best example, but like the back action, yeah, means that you fight back, say back, go back. That's the back action. So the opposite can never be the back action. That's the point. Now, causality action. Causality action is like to cause something to happen, right? So for example, like you might say like, okay, what's the opposite of be born? And some people might say maybe give birth. You know, the opposite of be born is give birth. It kind of works, right? Well, according to this rule, no. So the opposite of be born cannot be give birth, because it's a causality action, because be born equals cause. Sorry, because give birth equals cause to be born. You cause something to be born. And so according to this rule, no, it doesn't work. And finally, the passive voice. So for example, like, what's the opposite of, you know, like, what's the opposite of treat and cure? And some people might answer like, oh, maybe it's like be treated and be cured. As in, you know, like, you think of doctor and patient as opposites, right? It's possible to think of them as opposites, doctor and patient, because doctor is the one who treats and the patient is the one who is being treated. Well, again, according to this rule, doesn't work. So the passive voice cannot be the opposite. Now, all the four that I have listed here, canceling action, back action, causality action, the passive voice, they have special functional words. So you can say all of that stuff, but you don't use the opposition trick here. Okay, so that's the point. So that's pretty much it. Most of the time you don't really need to care about all of this. I mean, this from A to F. This is like complicated for a beginner, and just most of the time creating an opposite is really easy. So you don't really need to worry about. But what if the word is not elementary? Because in the beginning of the lesson, I gave you a rule of how to make an opposite of an elementary word. But what if it's not elementary? Well, thanks to the associative property of noun, most of the time this trick works with compound words as well. Not always, notice. Doesn't always work, but, well, most of the time it does. So, for example, like, if you have a long word, a compound word, most of the time you just add sh. And if you know for sure, okay? So, for example, hagalai. It's a compound word, means white. Well, ask anybody, what's the opposite of white? Everybody will like answer with no doubt that it's black, right? So there's no doubt that the opposite of white is black. Well, in this case, even if you don't know, so even if the word is a compound, but you know for sure that it's like the opposite. You know for sure that, okay, the opposite of this word is that word. You don't need to worry and just put and you can just put sh at the end. Most of the time. Notice that doesn't always work, but most of the time. And I mean the priority here is still the sh. Technically, sh is connected with the word lai here. Okay? So hagalai, what does hagalai mean anyway? Hagalai literally means a completely light color. Ha means color, galai means completely light. So a color that's completely light. That's why it means white. And hagalai literally means a color that's completely black. Okay, so that's why it works. Okay, number 2. Pao hom means smart. And so you know that the opposite of smart is stupid. Again, there's no doubt about it. It's pretty straightforward. So you can just put sh at the end and not worry. So 바오홈 means stupid. Another example is 니 바오솔세. 니 바오솔세 means selfish, right? And actually, if you take a look, what it's made of, it means that you only care about yourself. Okay, you only care about yourself. That's selfish. Now, what's the opposite of selfish? Well, it's altruistic. So selfish means that you only care about yourself, and which implies that you don't care about others. And so the opposite of that is altruistic, because altruistic people, they on the contrary only care about the others and don't care about themselves. It's like that's what altruism is. That you give yourself to the world and only care about other people and just don't give a damn about yourself. That's altruism. So that's why the opposite of selfish is altruistic. And finally, I put 1111 here. Well, never mind. So, and finally, the opposite of nega dosode, which means prove, is disprove. So it's pretty straightforward. So you just don't need to worry about, like, nega dosode looks like a long, complicated word. Well, you don't really need to care about what it's made of. If you know for sure that the opposite of prove is disprove, just put a sh at the end and don't worry. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Please check out my website, now.comzy.com. There you can find like all the information about the language and the dictionary and the automatic translation and even automatic pronunciation of all words. Like, just this website is awesome. Okay, thanks for watching.